Good morning, church. Good morning. So great to have you here with us. If this is your first time here, or maybe you're newer to CFC, my name is Steve Cabral, and I'm actually one of the pastors here on staff. This week, Pastor Ken had a family commitment, and he asked me to step in last minute, and so here we are. So usually, if you see me, I guess you would notice me as the in-house resident greeter. But I do more than that, believe it or not. But again, thank you so much for being here and for worshiping with us. So you're probably going to notice real quick why Pastor Ken is the lead pastor. Or you're really going to like me because I'm very short and sweet and right to the point. So that's my goal for today. So I'd like you to just journey with me. We've got a few scriptures to read, and we'll be in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8. So if you have your Bible, you can open it up. If you have your Bible app. If you don't have a Bible and you need one, we have Bibles, and we'd love to give you one. So if you need one, just put your hand up in the air. One of the ushers will get a Bible in your hand. Great? All right, let's dive in to Mark, chapter 8. And this story is unique. It's different from what we've seen in the past with Jesus. But here it starts in verse 22. And I apologize. I have like 2 volume levels, low or really loud. I'm Portuguese. I'm going to try to get in the middle so everybody can hear me clearly. But verse 22, it says, "When they arrived at Bethsaida, some people brought a blind man to Jesus, and they begged him to touch the man and heal him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. Then, spitting on the man's eyes, he laid his hands on him and asked, 'Can you see anything now?' The man looked around. 'Yes,' he said, 'I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking around.' Then Jesus placed his hands on the man's eyes again, and his eyes were opened. His sight was completely restored, and he could see everything clearly." So we find the disciples, their boat lands, this time in Bethsaida. It's a northern end of the Lake of Galilee. And almost at once, like it happens so often, a man is brought to Jesus for him to heal. The blind man is led along by his friends who beg Jesus to touch him, to make that physical contact which they believe will bring healing. Now, maybe this would be another routine miracle, if you could ever think of a routine miracle. But here, it appears the faith of those that brought him, they didn't doubt that with just one touch of Christ's hand, he would recover his sight. But the funny thing is, the man himself, he doesn't show an urgency or even an expectation of a cure that other blind men did. First, Jesus takes his hand and leads him away from the village. Now, Bethsaida at this time, it's not one of those tiny fishing villages. It actually has a population of over 10,000 during that time. So you can imagine the town would be noisy, it'd be bustling, there'd be a lot going on. So it'd be real noisy. Jesus wants to get this blind man away from the crowds, partly because he wants the man to be able to hear what he says, and partly because he has a special audience in mind and not the crowd in general. If Jesus had only wanted some privacy, he might have led the man into a house or an inner chamber of sorts and would have cured him there. But no, Jesus reached out, grabbed the man's hand, and didn't let go. Now we know that holding another person's hand is a very personal thing, especially if you hold it for any length of time. Come on. Some husbands even have a hard time holding their wives' hands. I'm one of them. But without saying a word, Jesus was communicating to the blind man that he cared and that he was entering this man's life. The blind man couldn't see what was happening, but he could feel what was happening. I believe at this point that this blind man's faith and hope began to grow. This Jesus that he heard so much about had just taken a hold of him and said, I'm not letting you go. He wasn't going to let go of the blind man. Jesus took the man's hand. You got to imagine this now. Jesus is guiding him around obstacles. He's verbally directing him where to step, where not to step, helping him when he stumbled. Even though he is blind, Jesus is still leading him. And I think that's the way it is with us. Even when we don't see Jesus, don't fully understand him, or don't fully believe, he takes us by our hand and he guides us to where we need to be in order for him to do what he would do inside each and every one of our lives. Usually when Jesus has healed someone, it happens instantly and completely. In fact, it's been a mark of his miracles up to this point. They appear effortless. He heals with a word. He calms the storm with a word. He multiplies bread simply by dividing it and handing it out and watching it all increase. But this time it's different. In a quiet spot outside of the town, in full view of his disciples, Jesus goes to work. Now, having someone spit in your eye is pretty offensive, especially even in our culture. Could you even imagine being in a doctor's office and he spits in your eye trying to heal you? You'd probably be very upset. You'd probably say this guy's a crackpot. But this man can't see. But he can hear and speak. So Jesus does something that he can hear and feel, and then he talks to him. So far, this is pretty much like what we've seen before, but something doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like everything is well. Now, hasn't Jesus laid his hands on the man to heal him? Apparently not. He can now see, but only in the vaguest outlines. Presumably, he knows what a tree looks like. So either he's been able to see at some point in his life, or he can imagine a tree from what others have told him. But when he looks at the people in front of him, they don't look like people. The picture he sees makes no sense. So once more, Jesus places his hands on the man's eyes, and now at once, the man is healed and he can see. He looks around, sight fully restored. Everything is clear and sharp. All is well. So you're probably wondering, why go through this strange two-step process of tackling this man's blindness? he does it for one simple reason. It's to point to the blindness of his audience, which is the disciples. For all that he's done for them so far, and for all that they've been involved in his ministry, yet all they can see is like trees walking. The picture they see makes no sense. The disciples, they got their eyes opened very gradually, like this blind man did. So Jesus is saying, you started off completely spiritually blind, then your eyes were gradually opened to understanding me and God's kingdom. Over time, you will see and understand clearly. I know things are spiritually fuzzy right now, but all will be made clear. I don't know where you may find yourself today. You may be one of the people in the crowd who believe Jesus can perform this much-needed miracle. You understand, Jesus is good, church is good. That's a good thing. But bringing the spiritually blind to church is as far as you will go to help them see clearly. You might be the blind man with no hope or assurance, not being able to see your purpose here in life. You're just existing. The difference here is the blind man will see and experience Jesus more than those who are choosing to casually be with Jesus. We have to come to know Jesus personally and intimately for ourselves. As a result, the blind will have a greater understanding that others in the crowd won't. We are blind without hope or assurance until we come to Jesus ourselves. You may be like the disciples. You've witnessed the miracles. You've been with him. But still, you don't quite clearly see who Jesus is or understand him fully. Like the disciples, our eyes are being gradually opened. If we're to experience the miracle working power of Jesus and truly have our eyes opened, as well as the eyes of those God has put in our midst, in our lives, we need to do what Jesus did. He cared for the blind man. He took interest in the man and his situation. He entered into the blind man's life. He was intentional about being there. He took initiative. He continues to lead the man while he is still blind. He's faithful to follow through, even though the results aren't instant. How quick are we to write someone off when they just can't get it together? How far are we willing to go? Is it just as far as the church steps? And finally, he does something for the blind man that he can hear and feel. People need to know that you're there. They need to see more than your "I'll pray for you" comment on Facebook or the praying hand emojis, which I hate to tell you, those are not praying hands, those are high fives. Are we willing to help people go from one place to the next? Are we willing to walk it out with them? Are we willing to do life? Are we willing to disciple them? My prayer for you is that we'll all be able to say one day, like Job did in chapter 29:15, that I served as the eyes for the blind and the feet for the lame. When we take these steps, you and I will start seeing clearly, and our faith will increase. If you go a few verses ahead, you'll notice that Peter comes to the point where he says, I know you are the Christ. I know you are the Messiah. He sees it clearly. Only in those moments are we ever going to be able to see Christ clearly, when we step out of our comfort zone and we help people. He commanded us, he commissioned us to go, teaching those, baptizing them, going. Where are you going? Who are you going with? That's the question I'll leave with you today. Let's bow our heads.